Brock means a lot to thousands of Australians, not because he was perfect or even particularly likeable at times, but because he was exceptional at the thing that mattered most, driving race cars faster than anyone else in this country ever has over a very long period of time. Peter Brock isn't just a famous racing car driver in Australia, he's one of the most successful and recognisable figures in the history of the sport. 9 times winner of the Bathurst 1000, 3-time Australian touring car champion, multiple Sandown 500 victories, more race wins, pole positions and major endurance trophies than almost anyone of his era. For decades he was the benchmark, the driver everyone else was measured against. For overseas viewers, Bathurst is key to understanding Brock's status. The Bathurst 1000 is Australia's most famous motor race, held at Mount Panorama, a public road circuit carved into the side of a mountain. It's fast, narrow, unforgiving and brutally physical. Brock didn't just win there, he dominated it. That's why he became known as the King of the Mountain. And yet Brock's story isn't just about trophies, it's about talent, temperament, innovation, controversy, loyalty, fallout and a career that shaped Australian motorsport itself. To understand why Peter Brock still means so much to so many Australians, you have to look at the whole picture, not just the wins, but the man behind them. Peter Brock was born in 1945 and grew up in Hurstbridge on the northeastern outskirts of Melbourne. His first car was an Austin 7 that cost him £5. It didn't have brakes and at one point didn't even have a body, because his father removed it with an axe. This is a point worth making because Brock learned car control the hard way. He learned to anticipate, to slide, to read a car before it got away from him. Long before data, traction control or engineering teams, Brock learned by feel. By the late 1960s, he was racing a home-built sports sedan put together in a henhouse. It was wild, underdeveloped and brutally fast. He won over 100 races in it and put himself firmly on the radar. At this point, he was more than just another fast local driver. He'd built a reputation as someone who could extract speed from just about anything, often in cars that were tough, underdeveloped, or flat-out difficult to drive. His combination of raw pace and mechanical sympathy is what started to separate him from the pack. It was Harry Firth, the legendary Foreman racer who ran the newly formed Holden dealer team, who spotted Brock's potential. Firth was looking for drivers who weren't just quick, but who could think, feel and develop a car. Drivers who could turn Holden's touring cars into race-winning machines. Brock fit that brief. In 1969, Firth gave Brock his first big break with a drive for the Holden dealer team at Bathurst in a Monaro GTS 350. Brock finished third outright on debut. It was enough to convince Holden they'd found something special. From there, Brock became central to Holden's racing identity. Through Tiranas and later Commodores, he wasn't just driving Holden cars, he became synonymous with them. For many Australians, Brock and Holden became almost inseparable. Red cars, big crowds, Brock at the wheel. It was a partnership that shaped Australia's touring car racing for more than a decade. But the intensity that made him brilliant also made him difficult. Brock backed himself. He trusted his instincts, and when he believed in something, whether it was a driving technique, a set-up philosophy, or later on, something far more controversial, he pursued it with absolute conviction. That mix of extraordinary talent and uncompromising temperament would define both his greatest successes and his biggest ruptures. Between 1978 and 1984, Brock dominated Australian touring car racing in a way that's never really been matched. He won Bathurst 6 times in 7 years, he won championships, he broke records. Yes, he had the best equipment. Everyone agrees on that. But the people who worked closest to him are equally clear. No one extracted more from a car. Colin Bond, one of the fastest drivers of his generation, was literally tearing cars apart trying to keep up, while Brock looked effortless. And let's not even mention Dick Johnson. Others recall Brock climbing into a car, doing 2 laps and walking away with a time no one else could touch. At Bathurst in 1979, Brock won by 6 laps, a margin that will never be repeated under modern regulations. On the final lap, with the race already won, he broke the lap record anyway. There's a persistent idea that Brock was only good out front. Some rivals spouted that line in the media, particularly those who didn't enjoy being compared to him. But the evidence doesn't really support it. In 1973, after running out of fuel and losing multiple laps at Bathurst, Brock clawed back time through a field of 60 cars. His lap times were identical for half an hour through traffic under pressure. That kind of consistency is rare in any era. Chasing the Jaguars in 1985, cars that were faster, more advanced and arguably illegal, Brock delivered what many still consider his finest Bathurst drive. One of the reasons Brock connected so strongly with the public is that people could see and hear what he was doing. Australia was at the forefront of in-car camera technology and Brock embraced it. While racing at close to 300 kilometres an hour, he would calmly talk to commentators, explain what the car was doing, what the tyres felt like, and where the race was being won or lost.
Peter, just watching your footwork here, it's very interesting. At the end, we can see the heel and toe and a bit of double to clutching down to first. Just explain your way around the circuit for us.
Okay, first gear here, half throttle now. Now I can flatten it. I'm in second gear. I'm going to rev limit to 7/8. Up to fourth now. I use all the road here to save the tyres. And you can see I'll get across the apex here. So I'm doing about 240 km per moment. Brakes on now. Back to second now. I'm trying to use everything I can to stop. Well, the brakes are very good, but I'm trying to sort of maintain a bit of brakes towards the end of the race because, boy, it's the hardest race I've seen. Third gear around there. Up to here, brakes on, back to second, just let it float down, keep it straight, cross the apex, and don't oversteer here, which I'm trying very hard not to.
No scripts, no rehearsals. That mattered. It brought people inside the car at a time when motorsport was still largely mysterious. Brock helped normalise the idea that drivers could be technical, articulate and relatable, not just fearless. Craig Lowndes is the clearest example of Brock's influence beyond his own results. Lowndes has repeatedly said that Brock sat him down and talked him through Bathurst corner by corner, how to position the car, how to flow across the top, where to be patient. That knowledge still shapes how Lowndes drives today. Brock wasn't unique in mentoring young drivers, but he was unusually generous with it. And importantly, he practiced what he preached. Even late in his career, even when retiring, he was still competitive. He wasn't hanging on. By the mid-80s, Brock was stretched thin. He was earning well, travelling constantly, but physically run down. His introduction to chiropractor Eric Dowker changed his personal life and eventually his professional one. The Energy Polarizer episode is now inseparable from Brock's story. Depending on who you ask, it was either harmless belief or genuine delusion. What's clear is that it cost him dearly. Brock believed in it completely. Holden did not. When Brock launched the HDT Director with a device against explicit instructions, Holden ended the relationship.
Back in 1948, Australia's first Holden started a motoring revolution in this country. Almost 40 years later, this Holden derivative promises to start a full-scale war. It's the HDT Director, reflecting, as the publicists point out, the inspiration and soul of Peter Brock.
People close to him later described a man surrounded by yes people, increasingly convinced that belief alone could bend reality. It was the most damaging period of his career, and it fractured what could have been a long-term automotive empire. Those who worked at HDT are blunt in hindsight. Brock was a brilliant driver and a poor businessman. The Polarizer wasn't just a technical disagreement, it represented Brock trusting belief over evidence. Jeff Grech, one of his mechanics, later said the collapse of HDT was painful because it didn't need to happen. With proper management, it could have rivaled Holden special vehicles in scale and longevity. Instead, it imploded. In the years leading up to his death, Brock's emotional state was complicated. Some close to him recall deep self-doubt and depression. Others insist he was happy, in love and optimistic. Both may be true. What's certain is that Brock never stopped driving. Even after retirement, he competed in Targa events, historic races and charity events. He returned to Bathurst and he remained visible. On September 8, 2006, while competing in Targa West, Brock lost control of a Daytona coupe and hit a tree. He was killed instantly at 61. His state funeral at St Paul's Cathedral reflected his reach beyond motorsport. This wasn't just a racing figure being farewelled, it was a national one. Nevertheless, legacy is complicated. Brock wasn't always easy. He wasn't always right. He made serious errors in judgment. And yet, when stripped back, his driving record remains untouched. 9 Bathurst wins, 6 pole positions, 3 touring car championships, decades at the top. Peter Brock is remembered because he earned it on the track, not because he was flawless or because the story is neat, but because he was demonstrably better than the rest. He raised the profile of Australian motorsport. He brought the public into the car. He treated fans seriously. He showed that longevity matters as much as brilliance. You don't have to like every decision he made to recognise what he achieved. That's why he's still talked about, not as a saint, but as a benchmark.